Welcome everybody. Welcome to this video, which is taking the place of the February call. The February call is scheduled for Thursday, February 19th at 6:30 p.m. and I'm going to be out of the country. So I've decided to send out this video in lieu of having the call. So thank you. Thank you for taking the time to view this video. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Thomas Kuster. I am the author and the presenter for a number of programs: Partners for Life, The 7 Stages of Love, and for 2015, The Next Best Version of Yourself, and where it applies, The Next Best Version of Your Couple. So thank you for being here. This is our second call for the year. I kicked off the year creating the year 2015, the year of creating the next best version of ourselves. That's the declaration. The call that I did in January, what I created was competencies. So consider that any role that you take on in life, there are things that you must be competent in order to fulfill on that role. Well, likewise, when you make a declaration and you're creating something new, there are competencies, core competencies, abilities, skill sets that you must develop in order to fulfill on that declaration. So I've created 6 core competencies that we'll be covering one each month. January, we covered the first one, and that one is self-awareness. Self-awareness is the first core competencies needed to fulfill on the declaration that we've created for the year. If you were not on that call, not a problem. You will get all the value that I'm going to give you today in this second core competency. And that call is recorded. Go to www.thestagesoflove.com, click on recorded calls, and the January call says self-awareness. Just click on it. You can download it. You can stream it. There's also a phone number where you can call in and listen to it on your phone, okay? You don't need to do that now. It does not have to be systematic. Today, we're going to do the second core competency, which is discipline. Now, discipline is defined as the practice of training people to obey rules or to change behaviors using punishment to correct disobedience. A second definition is a branch of knowledge, typically one studied in higher education, a systematic instruction to train a person, sometimes literally called a discipline, a craft, a trade, or other activity. I'm using discipline here as a distinction, and I'm distinguishing it as being your best when it means the most. Being your best when it means the most. It sounds good, but what does that look like? How does one leave this call and create in their day-to-day life being their best and distinguishing when does it mean the most? I've handled that for you. Try this on. Consider that there are 4 major resources for a human being. And to be your best when it means the most is around managing these resources. Now, the 4 resources are willpower, energy, time, and relationships. We're going to start with willpower. Willpower is a conscious, effortful regulation of the self by the self. It's the ability to control yourself and determine your actions. It's also the ability to delay gratification, resisting short-term temptations in order to meet long-term goals. The capacity, this is my favorite, the capacity to override an unwanted thought, feeling, or impulse. Willpower and discipline, in general, rates higher than IQ in predicting someone's success relative to what they're up to in their life. See, what many people don't realize is that willpower is a limited resource. And if it's a limited resource, then it would behoove you to know when you individually have the most willpower available for you. If you're a morning person, then you're stronger in the morning. You're going to have more self-control, more willpower in the morning. If you're not a morning person, takes you a while to get going, then maybe the midday is when you're going to have the most self-control and the most willpower. And then the night owls, of course, you're going to have more willpower and more self-control at night. Whatever the case in this core competency, there is good news because you can enhance your willpower. You can expand on it. So research shows willpower is limited. It's a limited resource. In other words, if you control yourself now, you use some willpower now, you will have less willpower later in other parts of your life. Good to know. Because people who lose their willpower often do things that they'd rather not do. So here are 4 ways that you can support yourself around enhancing and expanding your willpower. Number 1, anticipate and plan. Anticipate and plan for times of low self-control. I'll give you an example of that. Don't go to the grocery hungry. Most all of us know not to go to the grocery hungry. Another good one to know is if you're going to a big party. What's usually at big parties? A lot of food, a lot of drink, and a lot of desserts. Now, depending upon what you're dealing with, I'm just trying to use things that everybody can relate to, and food is one of those things we can all relate to, and taking care of our bodies is something we're all interested in. Managing what we eat, eating healthy, we're all interested in that. We don't always fall through on it because we don't anticipate and plan for those moments when we know we'll be weak. Do you ever just pretend that this time you'll be stronger? And it is a pretense. It's like self-awareness, the first core competency. You can see why it was first. You need to know yourself. You need to know how you are, and don't go against the grain, go with it. So what I used to do with parties, because I was weak, I wanted to eat healthy, but I'd go to a party and I would eat whatever they had. And I didn't just eat a little, I'd eat a lot. And I'm not a drinker, but the desserts would scream my name, and I would eat stuff that I just didn't want to eat. And then there'd be the consequence. The consequence would be depleted energy because of what I ate, depleted energy because of how I felt about what I ate, and then the physical response to what I ate, none of which made me very happy. So what I started doing was I would make appearances to parties. Wouldn't hang out there very long. Now, not the favorite thing to do, but at least I did show up. At least I got to interact, and then I'd get out of there before I would do things that I knew I didn't want to do. Today, no big deal. I can go to a party. I don't have to touch any of that stuff. But it took a little time to build myself up to that. So anticipate and plan. Another thing I wanted to say about anticipate and plan is interimly. So I started off, I would just make an appearance. Then I got stronger. Then I would go and I would take with me those things that I would drink. You know, my kombucha drinks, things that appealed to me, that managed my health. And I would even take a few snacks and stuff. I wouldn't make a big deal out of it, but it kept me from eating the stuff that was there that really didn't serve me. I hope that communicates. And I'm sure there's other things you could look at for yourself where you could anticipate and plan. Number 2, exercise. Exercise your willpower. Treat it like a muscle. So if you're exercising that muscle, then you can get more out of it. So naturally, the question would be, how do I exercise the muscle? It's really easy. It's so great. You exercise the muscle by delaying gratification. Example, you want a slice of cake, and you should have that. If you want cake, you should have that. But here's what you do. You cut the cake, you plate the cake, and you set it aside, and you wait 1 hour. Then you eat the cake. You practice delaying gratification. You don't give it to yourself the moment you want it. You create space, and then you have it. People who want to complete their relationship with cigarettes. You want a cigarette, you get the cigarette out, you get the lighter out, you set it aside. I mean, I would make a ritual out of it, right? Put it on a plate, set it aside, and then wait 15 minutes before you smoke it. And then push it further and further out. And before you know it, you have more and more self-control. Number 3, eat an orange. That's right, eat an orange. Glucose is one of the key ingredients that the brain needs for effective self-control. Number 4, meditate. Meditate daily and learn from your weakest moments. Go with the grain, not against it. What do I mean by that? Well, there are areas that you're weak in. And what I know about people, having coached many people and still coaching people today, one of the things I know about us, that is human beings, is that we will pretend that we'll do better versus realizing this is what I do. And if this is what I do now, then chances are very, very, very good this is what I will do in the future. And if that's the case, then I need to know that about me and regulate myself against that until such time that shifts. The next resource, I guess everything's in force today, okay? So the next resource is energy. Energy is the capacity to work. And energy comes from 4 major well springs in human beings. The physical body, the emotional body, the mind, and the spirit. In each of these domains, energy can be expanded and regularly renewed by establishing specific rituals. The rituals are not new, they're not hard, but mostly people will ignore them. Given you're on this call, I'm asserting that you will ignore nothing. What are the 4 rituals? The first one is sleep. Manage your rest. And if you're a restless sleeper, perhaps you suffer from insomnia, then you talk to every professional you can until you get to the bottom of it. Rest is essential. Sleep. And then there's food. That's number 2. I created myself a new mantra around food. For the last couple of years, I have this new mantra. And see, what I discovered or distinguished is that human beings eat for pleasure. If you didn't eat for pleasure, you wouldn't eat. Food has to be pleasurable. And if eating wasn't pleasurable, you wouldn't do it. But here's the new mantra that I took on that's very effective for me, and that is eat for energy versus pleasure. Now, that's just half the mantra. Eat for energy versus pleasure. And I started to calculate and notice what foods literally deplete my energy, and I started to notice what foods literally renew my energy. And then my mantra sounds like this: eat for energy versus pleasure, and make eating for energy my pleasure. And then the next one, the last one, is exercise. And exercise has so many benefits. One of those benefits is it reduces the hormone cortisol in your system. And in our culture, most of us have high levels of cortisol, and it's damaging to us, and it's energy depleting. I said that was number 4, it's number 3, sorry. And the last one is meditation. Meditate every day. Start with ever how much you can do. I say the minimum is 15 minutes. But start with whatever you can. In my current workshop, Rasha Salama, who works with me, she's leading the group through meditation, and she started everybody out with 5 minutes and having them expand from there. You could do that, but really 15 minutes, get to 15 minutes, okay? That's when you see more about yourself and you can expand more. Let's see. Inside of meditation, you could try on what I call the bliss point exercise. Now, a lot of you on this call have been trained in the bliss point exercise. Those of you who I'm coaching with certainly have been. But there's some of you who are new on the call and you haven't been. Go to my website, www.thestagesoflove.com. Click on recorded calls, and then go down the list of calls and find the one that says bliss point and listen to it. It's a short call, but it will lead you through the bliss point exercise, which is a great beginning for meditation and a great way to meditate throughout the day without having to actually step aside, without having to have a silent little place to be. It is heart focused. And a lot of the work I do is heart focused work. Now, one more thing I'd like to add about energy, and that is this. You can never argue with what is. And when you do, you deplete a lot of energy. Making now wrong robs you of energy. The energy that you need to alter the next moment of now. We deplete a lot of energy arguing with what's so and somehow expecting to win that argument. You will always lose. That argument is a losing argument. You will never win. And if you will never win, can you get clear on that it makes no logical sense to keep doing it? The logical sense is to go with the grain versus against it. That is, embrace what's so. Embrace what is. Doesn't mean you have to like it, but you don't have to dwell on what you like or don't like. Just embrace it. Why? Because it is. And you're not going to win the argument. And if you don't argue with it, you embrace it, then your energy stays consistent and maybe even renewed. And with renewed energy, you can alter the next moment of now, the next moment after that, and the moment after that, and then reality shifts. But right now is right now, exactly the way it is, exactly the way it isn't, and anything you try to do about this moment impacts you. The next resource for a human being is time. When's the last time you complained about not having enough to do? Not in the recent past. It's not very likely, right? Mostly, what do you complain about? You complain about being overwhelmed. You'll hear about overwhelmed from a lot of people. We get sucked into this concept, overwhelm. Try on that overwhelm is not a function of how much you have to do, but rather how much time you spend thinking about what you have to do. For example, a busy mother is running through a list of groceries that she needs to pick up on her way home. She's not actually any busier than the guy concentrating on the task at hand, but she may feel more pressed and she may feel more stress. Conversely, while I'm away on vacation, so I'm leaving for vacation tonight, I'll be enjoying my family and doing things that I'm technically on leisure time. But if all the while I'm checking emails and all the while I'm picking up voicemails and I'm looking at text messages, I will likely feel as though I had no time off. And the quality of time that I spent with my family will be impacted. Schultz, I think that's how you say her name, it's Shulte, in her book called Overwhelmed. She terms this as mental tape loop phenomenon. Mental tape loop phenomenon. And this zaps your energy reserves, so much so that you can't even decide what to think about. Worrying about work when you're at home and worrying about home when you're at work. Time is a finite resource. We try to manage time, but mostly time is managing us. So, consider there's two kinds of time. There's clock time, like there's 24 hours in a day, 60 minutes in an hour, 60 seconds in a minute. And all time passes equally. But then there's real time. And real time is relative. That is, time flies or drags by depending on what I'm doing. 2 hours sitting at an airport because the plane got delayed can seem like 12 years. While your 12-year-old children seem to have grown up in 2 hours. Which time describes the world you really live in? Clock time or real time? You and I live in real time, a world in which all time flies when you're having fun and all time drags when you're doing things you resist. Real time is mental. You create it and you can manage it. That's the good news. You see, there's only 3 ways you can spend time. You can spend time on thoughts, you can spend time on conversations, and you can spend time on actions. Any action or conversation that's important to your success should have a time assigned to it in your calendar. You see, to-do lists simply get long and unworkable, while appointments work. If you schedule an appointment with someone, you keep it, right? To be your best when it means the most, you need to schedule appointments with you, appointments with yourself, and you shift how you view those appointments. You see, mostly people book appointments with themselves with a low priority. It'll get displaced easily. Highly successful people, and I mean successful professionally, successful in their relationships, successful in their character, successful in their experience and quality of life, maintain the appointments with themselves as the highest priority. So you need to have blocks of time for meditation. You need to have blocks of time for high priority thinking. Then you also need to have blocks of time for your conversations and your, of course, actions. Always schedule a begin time and an end time, and keep your appointments. Another powerful practice in managing your schedule within time is to manage time for interruptions. There's always interruptions. Put time in for interruptions. Unless I'm on a coaching call, unless I'm videoing or something that I cannot break away, I schedule 15 minutes an hour for interruptions / breakdowns. And if there is no breakdown or interruption, I use that 15 minutes to go ahead and add to picking up emails or text messages and the like. Otherwise, I have blocks of time designed for emails, text messages, etc. Do not make yourself so accessible. You need to train people's expectations. You see, if people can get to you instantly, then you've trained them that you're instantly available. And before you know it, you create an experience of pressure and overwhelm that's unnecessary. Better to let people know how you work. For instance, on my phone message every day, I change it. And I say how things are going. For instance, if I'm traveling, I'll say, hey, this is Thomas. This is this day. This is February 16th, Monday. And today I'm traveling and will be unavailable. I'll return phone calls tomorrow. So people have an expectation and I can fulfill on that. The other thing that might be, it might say, this is Thomas. It's Monday. I'll be in the office all day and I'll return messages this afternoon. So somehow manage the expectations of people and reduce being instantly available. I worked with a guy years ago who owned a huge distribution company, and he had a brilliant thing that he did that I love. And here's what he did. He wore a cap only when he was unavailable. So if he was on task or could not be interrupted, he created this as a do not disturb sign. You need a do not disturb sign and you need to honor it, and your staff needs to honor it. So he would put that on, but otherwise he had an open door policy. So he was available, but at the same time, he had a way of making sure he could stay on task and get things handled. So that is an opportunity to handle time. The fourth and the last resource that we'll talk about is relationships. Relationships are an investment, and good relationships are more than something you want. They're something you need in order to be your happiest and most productive self. As a human resource, one needs to be conscious of his or her inner circle, mid-circle, and outer circle of relationships. Your inner circle are those with whom you have the most influence and that have the most influence over you. These are the relationships that require you to be your very best. Now pay close attention In most of my coaching interactions, what I find is people give themselves permission to not be their very best with their inner circle. In fact, what I find mostly is people will give their very best to their outer circle while being slack with the inner one. Can you see yourself doing that? This way of managing relationships has a huge cost. Your mid-circle are those people with whom you have little influence. The influence you do have is generally relative to the connections that the mid-circle is to the inner circle of your relationships. And then the outer circle are those with whom you have no direct influence. This would include acquaintances, your guy at the Starbucks, the folks down here at my Midtown grocery store, maybe your banker, people like that. By influence, I mean they really don't have a valuable way of listening to you or you to them. The way you listen to one another is generally superficial or simply to get a quick, not long-term result. We generally want to be well thought of in the world, and we consider our outer circle the world. I'm inviting you to shift the context that the outer world, that the world is your inner circle. And the beauty is, when you practice high levels of being with your inner circle, then the mid-circle gets the glow of that being, while the outer circle gets the afterglow. You find yourself more consistent in being your best, being the best version of yourself everywhere. Another aspect of relationships as a resource is anything that's important to you, anything that you're after, you cannot get alone. And by the same token, the people in your circles that are up to something, they can't do it alone either. They need you. I love Zig Ziglar. And Zig always said, you can get anything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want. So to wrap up this video, core competency, number 1, self-awareness. Number 2, discipline. That's what we covered today. And inside of discipline, these are the things I want you to remember. There are 4 resources. The first is willpower, then there's energy, the third is time, and the fourth is relationships. Between today and our next call, which is March 19th, Thursday, 6:30 p.m., go on my website for the call-in number, www.thestagesoflove.com. I want you to focus on discipline. Practice managing those 4 resources. Be somebody this month, these 4 weeks, that you haven't been before. Be somebody new. Thank you. I appreciate you. I honor you. I respect you. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for being in my world, in my life. For those of you I coach directly, I appreciate you, and thank you for making my life and my world bigger because you're in it. For those of you who have not had that opportunity, I trust that one day we will. Good day.